Hey guys, it's Carl Allen. Welcome to Module 6, Lesson number 3, Negotiation. So I'm going to break negotiation down into two lessons because this is where the rubber now starts to meet the road. And I'm going to lay out for you what I call my 5, 6, 7 negotiation blueprint. So there are 18 steps that I deploy when I'm running a negotiation to buy a business. And I also use this on the opposite side when I'm selling a business as well. Now, you may not always need all 18 steps, but obviously, the more pieces of the puzzle that you have in your back pocket, the better off the negotiation is going to be for you. So I'm going to give you all 18 steps, and I break them down into 3 layers. So I start off with what I call the foundation layer. Then we've got the deal layer where you're going through the actual negotiation of the deal. And then the most important layer is actually the closing layer. So the 7 steps in the closing layer, because that's really important, I'm going to break that out. And I'm going to do that in the next video, lesson 4, negotiation part 2. So for negotiation part 1, I'm going to go through the foundational layer and the deal layer. Now, the good news is some of you may have figured this out already, but you've actually been negotiating way before watching this video because the negotiation actually starts from the very first touch point that you have with a prospective seller. So there are 5 steps in the foundation layer. Let's start off with the first one, KLT, know, like, and trust. It's relationship and it's rapport. And I've said this previously, and this is where your negotiation all started. From that very first meeting, that very first call, that very first letter that you sent. In any successful negotiation, the seller must know you, like you, and trust you. It's very, very important. And I've been talking about this throughout the entire process, the real critical importance of building very strong relationships with sellers. That's what drives KLT, know, like, and trust. And it's all about building rapport. You've got to become friends with these people and really develop more than a superficial relationship to really set you up for a successful negotiation when we get into the deal layer next. So step 2 is all about being a safe pair of hands and safeguarding the seller's business. Remember what I showed you in deal origination when we were talking about seller psychology. 90% of small businesses, they're all about psychology rather than money. And it's all about positioning yourself as that person that the seller really wants to take the business forward. It's so important that you become the guy or the girl, that you're the person they really want to have the business. It's almost as if they're giving away one of the children and they're vetting the safest, most acceptable person to really take that onto the next level. That's who you've got to be. You really need to sell that business owner. You really need to sell them that your vision and your sector expertise, that credibility is what the business needs to take it forward. Now, obviously, you're going to change this business. You're going to integrate it into the business that you've already got. You're going to put your own touch and feel on it. But what most sellers want to see, especially with trade buyers, which is what you are, is that they want to see that someone's going to care about the business, that they're going to safeguard the key employees and the key customers, and that you're going to honor and respect the culture, the legacy, the heritage that's been built over the years that the owners had the business. And in a lot of cases, that's more important than the physical money that they're going to receive. And nirvana for you, to sum it up, is having that seller be just really proud that you are the one taking the business on, and that you're going to grow it and you're going to integrate it, and that business is then going to be part of your big future empire. And you want sellers to feel some pride that they were a small part in the phenomenal success that you're going to have in your life and within your business empire. And you want them cheering you on from the sidelines. Building up your credibility, step 3, is a really important part of a negotiation as well. You should have already developed very high credibility with the seller, credo as I call it, as part of getting them to know you, like you, and trust you. And clearly, if you're buying a business that will expand your footprint in the sector that you're already in, or if you're going into a complementary market, those are the sector credibility chops that you need to leverage as part of your negotiation. It's all about you having the skills to take that business, safeguard it, and integrate it into the business that you already have. Or if you're not doing the integration, it's about you leading the team of people that will do it for you. Some of those people are going to be in your existing business, and some of those people should be in the business that you're buying. And then it's really important as we get into those detailed negotiations that you have what's called a proof of funds. So by this point, you need to have built the financial relationships to get the deal financed and get the deal closed. You should have been talking to financiers as early as part of your deal origination and have those financing partners ready to fund these deals when you get to that final stage. And I'll show you in modules 7 and 8 how the financing all layers into the closing and the deal execution stages. So the next step of the foundational layer to negotiations are the 30 questions that you should have gone through in your first seller meeting to lay all of that groundwork. So first of all, why is the owner selling? You'll see shortly why eliciting what the seller really wants is the cornerstone to any successful negotiation. When you're negotiating with anybody, once you know exactly what they want and why they want it, it's really easy to build a case and a deal around that. So really, really important, which is why we place so much emphasis on really getting the detail and the insight as to why the owner's selling the business. And it's also really key to understand how the business model works. How does it make money? How does it operate? How do they win new business? You'll have been through the business's SWOT analysis, its strengths, its weaknesses, its opportunities, and its threats. So you'll know everything about the business and what it needs to do potentially to pivot as you grow it profitably in the marketplace. And you'll know all about the financial trends. And we talked about this before. When revenues go down and profits go up, that mathematically is very, very hard to do. But you'll see a lot of that in the deals that you do. So challenging the seller on those issues in a really friendly and constructive way is a great way of continuing to build rapport and build credibility. And again, it's really about positioning yourself as that true industry expert and by probing it in a gentle way and challenging and asking all these amazing questions in the order that I set them up for you. But it's positioned you as a really sophisticated and professional business buyer that they know, that they like and they trust, which is really going to pay dividends as we get deeper into this negotiation. And again, it's all about playing the numbers. Your mindset on the negotiation will change massively when you've got multiple deals to look at. If you've only got one deal, then you're going to get deal heat, where you get attached to the deal so much you can't let go. You can't help it. It's the way the human brain works. You've got to have multiple deals so you can play them off against each other. And in deal origination, I showed you, how to build the funnel, how to constantly feed that funnel with opportunities and how to qualify them, how to filter them based on how well they tie to your deal specification one sheet. How related are they strategically to the types of businesses that you want to buy to build your empire? And it's really having enough of the most attractive businesses, because your mindset changes massively when you've got all of those different options and you can walk away from a deal if it's not working. You'll see that in a minute. So that's the foundation layer. And if you've been doing the work and following the program, you've already done all of this work. So now we're in new territory. Layer 2, the deal negotiation layer. So you found a business, you've had the meetings, you've built the relationship, you've set up that foundational negotiation layer, you've done the financial analysis, you've built your offer sequence, and you've started to send out offers. There are 6 parts to the deal layer. It's all about your offer sequence, which I'll remind you of in a minute, and setting your negotiation boundaries. It's about how you create a win-win deal. But if the deal gets sticky, how you can successfully and positively, weaken the seller's confidence to get them second guessing just how much they think the business is really worth. And your big weapon at the start of the deal layer is having your offer sequencing mapped out. So you're always those few steps ahead of the seller throughout the entire negotiation. And in all the deals that I've ever closed, I've always had a minimum of 6 levels of offer. What you tend to find, if the seller's listed the business for sale with a business broker, they typically have that inflated expectation of price that they can get for the business. And the offer sequence slowly but surely gets them to drop below the line where the offer is going to make financial sense for you. And if you're targeting the right seller, distressed or highly motivated sellers of good, positive, cash flowing businesses, then you'll find that that price expectation is lowered anyway, whether they've come through a broker or more likely not. So offer sequencing is really, really important. It's all about incrementally making a deal more attractive to the seller financially without adjusting the payment cover, which you know is that key number that you need to make sure that you're not doing a deal where the payment cover ratio is greater than 1.5. So once you've got your offer sequence and you're sending those offers out, you're then negotiating in between the rounds of those offers. So remember, you don't offer again until you get a counter. Once you've got that counter, you can start to negotiate the fine points. So the next stage in the deal lay for negotiation is really understanding, what does the seller actually want and how can you create a win-win deal? It's all about empathy. And I'd even go one step further and call it tactical empathy. So tactical empathy means we're just acknowledging their position. We're acknowledging what they think they want, but drilling into what they actually want. You can then start to horse trade financial items, which you should be most concerned about versus the non-financial items. So once you understand what those are, you can build them into the deal structure. And it can be that you can get away with the deal without relying on changing the financial terms. I'll give you an example. So I bought a company called Radio Express in California a couple of years ago. And once upon a time, it was a really large media company in the radio syndication industry. Husband and wife owned it. The husband was kind of running the business every day, and the wife was working in sales. Then the husband sadly died. Though the business didn't nosedive, revenues went down by about 2/3, but it was still a nice little profitable business. The wife was really stuck on a premium valuation. She was being advised by her CPA, who was running the deal, that the business is worth X, and that really, because she wanted to retire, she should take most of that money at closing. So I listened to why she was selling and all the different things, and I was showing great tactical empathy for her situation. And then I said, what do you really want? What does this look like for you? What's nirvana? And she said, well, Carl, there's kind of three things for me. Three things that I need out of this deal. She said, the first thing is I want to make sure that this business is protected and the legacy that I built with my husband continues. And then she said something really interesting. And she said, and for me, it's all about the logo. She said, I've heard stories where businesses buy other businesses and they change the names of the business and they change the branding and they change the logos. And I don't want that. I'm so proud of this business and I'm so proud of what we built and I'm so proud of what we stand for and I want it to stay. So I thought, well, if I don't change the logo and I don't change the name of the business, I was never going to change the name of the business, but the logo was a little bit dated. But I knew if I agreed not to change the logo, that was a piece of horse trading that I could use later in return for some financial concessions. The second thing she said was, I just want to make sure that this business is in good hands. And I said, look, you should be so proud of this business that you've built. And you should be so proud of the legacy that you've created and how you've disrupted the industry, the radio syndication industry. And I want you to be proud of me as the new owner of this business. And I want you to even cheer me on from the sidelines. I want you to be as proud of me. And I want your husband to kind of look down from heaven and be really, really proud that you've handed the business to me and I've made such a great success of it. And, she got really teary. And then I realized that her husband was, I don't want to call it an Achilles heel. I wasn't going to use the death of her husband to kind of negotiate against her, but I knew what she really wanted. It wasn't really about the money. My subconscious mind was telling me that she wanted that safe pair of hands that was going to really protect the legacy of the business she and her husband had built. So I was about to use that and the logo to horse trade. So I said, look, I can afford to pay $250,000. I'm going to pay you just shy of $20,000 as a closing payment. You're going to be able to go on a vacation, all the places you used to go with your husband and take your family, and you can relax knowing that I'm going to be driving this business forward. And I'm never going to change the logo. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep the name and I'm going to keep the logo because I want you to see this business 10 years from now, 20 years from now, thriving and something that you and your husband would be really, really proud of. And as soon as I kind of got into that conversation, the numbers were really, really easy. That's what she wanted. It wasn't about money. It was about the other things. So I bought this business for a fraction of what her CPA had valued it for, and I didn't use any of my own money. It was a little bit of the cash that was left in the business to pay her a closing payment that took her on vacation, paid her closing costs, and the rest was seller financing and earnouts that we've talked about before. And she was absolutely delighted with that deal. You've got to take your deal and look at what I call the FAB, the features, the advantages, and the benefits of the deal and how you can really get into somebody's subconscious mind. So I'm going to take you through some practical psychology just to show you how the subconscious mind actually works and how you can utilize it when you're negotiating a deal. So as human beings, we do things for only two reasons. And one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, calls it the PPP, the pleasure pain principle. So every single thing we do in our lives is either to gain pleasure or avoid pain. And that includes buying and selling businesses. The beauty of what we do is that we can do both for the seller. So the subconscious mind is a really phenomenal piece of kit that we've got, this 2 million-year-old brain. And your brain is taking in 2.3 million pieces of information every single second of your life. But it filters that. It filters that through visual things you can see. It filters it through auditory things you can hear. And it filters it through kinesthetic, things you can feel or touch. And smell and taste are filters as well. But what's really important is the conscious mind. So the front of your brain, that instantly sees things and remembers things. That can only capture between 5 and 9 pieces of data per second. So the other 2.2999 whatever pieces of information, they're stored in your subconscious mind. And your conscious mind deals with logic. The back part of your brain, the bigger part of your brain, your subconscious mind, deals with emotions. So when you're buying something like a car, you know, the price of the car, the miles per gallon, the color, the size of the wheels, all those different things, you know, those are features. That's what your conscious mind processes. But as human beings, we take action based on emotion. People don't buy Porsches, for example, because of the color and the speed, and they don't buy because of the miles per gallon and any of the other technical features that the car has. Porsche is in the ego business. People buy Porsches, and I'll hold my hands up, I've owned 4. It's ego. It's about how do I look and how do I feel driving this car? And how are people going to think about me when I'm driving a Porsche? So there are 9 emotions that we go through when we make decisions. And as human beings, the most dominant emotional power that we have is fear. The highly motivated sellers that we're targeting are often worried or fearful that their legacy will die along with them. And that's why we always position ourselves as that safe, trusted pair of hands. And other entrepreneurs will only sell their business because they want lots and lots of money. That emotion is greed. We filter those people out. Those aren't the highly motivated sellers that we're looking for. Other reasons for selling other emotions could be vanity, envy, lust, pride, laziness, shame, or ego. Those are the 9. So we buy things and sell things and do things based on these 9 emotions that are flowing through our subconscious mind. So let's quickly translate this into deals. It's all about knowing what your prospective seller really wants. What's the emotional power trigger? What's going on in the subconscious mind that is making them want to sell? Is it fear? Because they're just not willing or prepared to run the business anymore, and they don't want to let their employees and their customers down. You know, is it pride? Because they want to go to the country club or bar and say, I sold my business. Is it shame? Do they feel ashamed that they've had the business for 30 years and they don't have what it takes anymore to keep moving it forward? You have to elicit what that power emotion is, and then map your deal to the features and the benefits. And in my experience from the hundreds and hundreds of deals that I've done, the features of a deal are the price, the structure, and the conditions. So I'm going to pay you $2 million for this business. That's the price. I'm going to pay you $500,000 at closing, but I'm going to pay you the rest in seller financing payments over 5 years. That's the structure. And then I'm going to give you an earn out if the profits go above a certain level. those are the conditions. So those are the features. Okay, great. So what does that mean? So for the seller, the benefits of the deal then are, well, I built this business, I've worked really hard, I've been really successful. Now I don't want to own it anymore. I want to retire, or I want to move on. I want to do something else. But what really matters, guys, is what really, really, truly matters, and what's really important is what are the deep emotional benefits that your deal is going to give to that seller. And for most people that sell businesses, it's pride. It's been about monetizing their life's work, allowing them to erode their fear of not having what it takes to keep going, and then sadly, inevitably, shutting their doors forever. So again, the pleasure pain principle. The business isn't going to be worth anything if they have to close the doors, if they're going to have to pay off all the liabilities, and all the money that they've saved for retirement is going to evaporate. So a big benefit is really that loss of pressure, that ability to go and do other things. So really, really important. And now that we've spent some time on emotions and creating a win-win deal, let's talk about confidence erosion. So if you've gotten this far and the sellers are still sticky on the actual numbers and the terms of the deal, what you can do is start to erode their confidence, but in a friendly and positive way. Start drilling into their forecasts, make them second guess themselves, make them fear that this deal is not going to happen, and see how that massively translates into the negotiation. And let's say the business that you're buying is doing $2 million in revenues, and the forecast for the next 2 years are 2.5 million and 3 million. So drill into those forecasts the seller gave you. Drill into them like crazy. Find out all the assumptions behind them. Where's the new order book? What new customers are you going to bring on board? How are you going to bring them on board? Because the business probably isn't doing a lot of marketing right now. So really pull these things apart, but in a very friendly, very positive, and a very constructive way. And then start looking into the marketplace. Find some things in the market that you're concerned about, or might not actually be concerned about, but they're factual things out there. And then start peppering those into the conversation. What if this happens in the industry? And then what if this changes? And what if this customer goes away? And what if that supplier changes? What's that going to mean, Mr. Seller, for your forecast? What's that going to mean to the value of your business? And then start talking about the competition. So, Mr. Seller, you own a small bookstore, 20 years ago. What if Amazon or Google come into the industry? Or what if you own a technology company and all these other competitors from China and India and other low-cost economies, if they come in and start taking your market share, what's that going to mean for you? What's that going to mean for the valuation of the business? How are you going to overcome that? And then talk about some of the other big macro issues that may have an impact, like Brexit or a presidential election or a global pandemic or oil price fluctuations or interest rate changes or currencies going nuts. Really get them thinking about, well, yeah, this all could happen, and will my business be going to be worth as much then? So really start them doubting and second guessing, and it really starts to kind of erode the ground that they're standing on, because negotiations are all about standing on a firm place. And if you're in a rock solid stance, like if you're firing a gun and you fire the gun, the recoil is not going to knock you off base. But if you're standing in the wrong way and you're on loose ground and you fire the gun, the recoil is going to knock you off. It's kind of the same thing when you're buying a business and you're running a negotiation. You want to be eroding the seller's negotiation stance by asking all of these confidence-busting questions. And then you can also ask, what if when I assume ownership, some of the key people leave out of loyalty to you, or they decide they're going to go off and do something else? What's that going to mean to the business? And you may already have a plan for that already to quickly nip that in the bud. But again, you want to layer it into the conversation and then say, what's going to happen if the customers start to leave? How are they going to react when you tell them that you're selling? Are they going to go off and find somebody else because they're loyal to you? What's that going to mean for the business? And what's that going to mean for the price of your business? And again, you're just doubting them, having them doubt about their position in this negotiation. So the next step in the deal negotiation layer is your negotiation style. And this is something that I picked up from a really awesome book that I recommend that you read. It's the best book I've ever read on negotiation, and I've probably read 100. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who was a former chief FBI hostage negotiator. So he's the guy that was going to go into negotiate when a bunch of terrorists have a family and they're going to kill them all unless they get $100 million. He's the guy that goes in and he fixes it. It's a great book, and there's a section in the book where he talks about, your job as a negotiator is to be what he calls, and I love this, the late night FM DJ. It's really, really important. And if you've ever listened to a late night FM DJ, he's calming people down, and he's talking very, very quietly, and he's talking very deliberately, and he's slowing everything down. Because what you've got to understand for people selling their businesses is that this might be the only time that they've ever done it and will ever do it. And they're completely unaware how to do it. So it's a really emotional time. It's like buying and selling houses. It can be really stressful when you're buying and selling houses, and by slowing them down and getting them into their comfort zone, they start to really trust you as part of this negotiation. And what's also really important is that you listen a lot more than you speak. So let the seller speak at least 3 times more than you, because if you're speaking all the time, then it makes the negotiation all about you. Every successful negotiation to buy a business has to be about them. It has to be about the seller. It's all about you eliciting what they want, why they want it, labeling those emotions around it, understanding whether it's pain or pleasure motivated or probably both. And it's all about mapping the benefits of your deal to what they actually want in their subconscious mind. It's about disarming them and making them feel safe. And if you do that, then you do the most important thing when it comes to buying a business. You enter the conversation that's going on inside of their subconscious mind. You do this, my friends, the rest is very, very easy. And you can also really spice this up by future pacing the exit. So ask the question, so what are you going to do, Jeff, when you retire? What are you going to do, Susan, when you've sold the business? What's next for you? Well, I'm going to go play golf, and I'm going to go and spend time with my kids or my grandkids, and I'm going to go on this vacation, and I'm going to go and do all this great stuff, and I'm going to go and volunteer for my church, and I'm going to go and help my buddy who's starting a business, all that stuff. Really future pace and drill into that and say, yeah, that's a fantastic decision. That's going to be really, really good. I can see how that would be really good. Verify it, empathize. And another strategy that I have if things get tricky is called pass the blame. So for me, in any negotiation at all times, I'll maintain the best, friendliest, most unbelievable relationship I can with the seller. And when difficult conversations need to be had, it's not that I'm prepared to do them. I love tough negotiations. But if there's any bad news or anything that's sticky, I let my contingent fee advisors battle it out with the seller's lawyer or CPA, because you and the seller need to keep that great relationship. And then if anything bad needs to happen, you can always blame one of your advisors. So you can blame your financier. So obviously we're talking about leverage buyouts here. We're buying businesses using other people's money. And in a lot of cases, if the seller wants X for the business and you can only get to Y, you can blame the financier. Say, look, they're only going to lend me this amount of money. This is how much they think the business is worth. I've spoken to 5 of them or 10 of them. There's no way I can get anywhere close to your valuation. And what that does psychologically anchors the price. And then if they still want more, you can then factor in like earnouts that we talked about. Now, finally, I want to show you another really cool trick that I use in a negotiation. Not all of the time, but if my offer sequencing doesn't work and I just can't get the seller engaged in my pacing with different offers, then I do something called the 2-offer strategy. And the reason for this, again, comes down to human psychology. The human brain absolutely loves choices. When you make choices that are binary, the human brain absolutely loves it, and it becomes really, really difficult for the brain to find something in the middle. So what I do with a deal sometimes is I'll value the deal and I'll structure it. And I'll do it in 2 ways. One generally is with a much lower offer, but with a high closing payment. The other one is a much higher offer, but it's generally seller finance with little to no closing payment. So let me give you an example. Let's say you find a business that was doing $2 million in revenues with a 10% profit margin, or $200,000 a year in profit. You apply a 2.5 times multiple to the profit, so the enterprise value is $500,000. So assuming no surplus cash, no real estate, no liabilities, we're paying $500,000 for the shares in the business. You know that from last time, correct? So for offer 1, use the first offer in your offer sequence. In this case, let's say it's 80% of the enterprise value, or $400,000. Assuming that you've got assets in the business or other ways of generating external financing, you're going to put $300,000 down, and the remaining $100,000 would be seller financing. And what you might find is that the seller is more interested in the total value of the deal, wants to walk into the golf club or into the bar and say, hey, I got $800,000 for my business. I got a 4 times multiple and the average is only 2.5. Didn't I do great? Well, sure, you can easily do that. You won't pay any money at closing, but you'll pay $800,000 in seller financing, maybe over 5 years or maybe even over 10 years. Hey, I'd pay $1 million for that deal if I could buy it over 10 years, because that's $100,000 a year that I'm paying to the seller. I'm still making $100,000 a year by splitting those profits. And that's without even growing the business or integrating it into the business that you already have. So that's the 2 offer strategy and the end of the foundational layer and deal layer of negotiation. So I'll see you guys soon with negotiations part 2, where we'll cover the closing layer. Until then, bye for now.